Hey up lads and lasses, Danfire here, back again with some more GR2 content for you today. So this is going to be a little mini-series. I'm going to start off. It's going to be the build premises of each of the hull types, and we're going to go through each of the ships. I don't have all the ships, but I'll go into shipbuilding, we'll look at them, and we'll discuss the builds that you could potentially work on them. We're going to start off with the small ships. We're starting off with the frigates, and this will replace the update video this week. Next week there will be an update video, so destroyers will come after that. I may slot these in on a Thursday as well, just to get these series out a little bit faster for you guys, to help you guys out. It's definitely more catered towards newer players, although some of the veterans may learn a thing or two as well. So, frigates are an interesting hull type. They're very useful in the exploration because you can use them to kite. I've talked about this in one of my previous videos and shown it off, where I've had a frigate just running around the outside of the map, stopping UAVs from a carrier attacking any of my ships, and that's where most of the PvE damage comes from carriers, is these UAVs, which we don't have because they do like 1 billion damage and I'll suck balls. But anyway, so they're very, very useful for that situation. They're also great in war, because in war, if someone attacks you and they don't do the auto battle, you can use your frigate then to just run them around the map. And if they can't kill you and you're on the slot and they can't kill you, you win that victory. And that's a defeat for them. That's wasted armament for them. And it's 15 armament to attack, so it's quite costly armament for them. So another really good use for them is, again, that war. And so yeah, so they do hold some use in the meta. They're not the most amazing things in the entire world, but you need to fit them properly for these roles. Now, as discussed just then, I mentioned that they're really good at dodging, and so I'm going to show you how to build frigates, how I build them, and that's for keeping them away from enemy ships and using them to kite enemies around and players around within the war to get the most out of them. They can sort of do a bit of a support role. They're not really made for it though. They have one subsystem, and that subsystem always seems to give specifically things for thrusters or sometimes even transition devices. So they're not in the best places for even support, but I guess you could say that dodging and kiting is a support element within itself. Anyway, let's jump in. So, if we have a look at frigates, I've got a couple that I can show you some builds on. So here is a blast. Now, you get these frigates at the very start of the game. They're fantastic ships due to the fact that they've got this warship giving fleet mining capacity increase. That's the amount they mine, not the warehouse. So this is really important to get anyway, and probably get 5 of them, 1 for each of your mining fleets. But yeah, generally, that's about it. Steel Barry is actually really useful on it. So damage will not exceed 9% of durability limit. So your maximum durability, you can't take more than 9% of that durability limit, and this decreases every level. You can get this to a point even with a maxed out, so 75,000 durability on this one. This has not got an armor plugin or anything like that. You can get this steel barriers, this damage will not exceed, to a point where if it gets hit by a dust maker that does like 100,000 damage, or a comet in close range, or anything which is like a big single hit, large amount of damage, it ignores it completely. It takes no damage. It's crazy. Well, it takes 9% or whatever this goes down to. So it's actually quite a fun to use in arena when someone like launches a dust maker and you fly this into the way of it, hits this, does nothing, and they kind of sat there scratching their head going, why do I do no damage with a maxed out dust maker? Very situational, that, obviously. Also has when movement speed is greater than 40, critical strike rate increases by 20%. I believe this is on almost all the frigates. Certainly on a couple of them anyway. What this basically means is if your movement speed is greater than 40, you will have increased critical strike rate, which is just quite nice. This does increase the critical strike rate per level, and the speed stays the same, so quite easy to pull off. You just need to put a thruster on it, basically. Shield, sort of important, obviously. Reduce more HP means you're less likely to die, but yeah. Reform wise, it's got critical strike rate and critical strike damage. No weapon specifics for the blast. So, since there is no weapon specifics, you can fit whichever weapons you want on here. Now, my recommendation for the blast, I run it with PT guns. You could certainly run it with PT guns. This is to help support my other ships a little bit when I am using it. Is to make sure, one, on all frigates pretty much, you want to make sure you've got both a transition device and a large propeller. I actually don't recommend the large propeller. There is the other version of the propeller that you can get, which goes from T1 to T2, and I think that's the long-lasting propeller. That is a better one for frigates. Use that one. Unfortunately, I only have one prop, and I had to make it that one because I needed it for my monster earlier in the game, and I have not had, I've not had another one since, and I've been on this server for a while now. I think this is like 3-4 months in or something. Anyway, this is not the ideal build here at all. What you would want is, actually it doesn't matter too much. You can run it like this. The other shape you can look for is T3 weapons in the straight line configuration across here. That will allow you to put 2 T3s and 2 T2s. That's the most you can get, and frigates fire 2 weapons every 6 seconds, so if there is that cooldown issue like there is with PTs, because they're on a 10-second cooldown, you will want to try and get hold of 2 more weapons on here just to balance it out and keep that fire rate going up. But yeah, for the most part, that's about it. Make sure you got a proper mate. I'd recommend putting a transition on here, and then 2 T3 weapons and 2 T2s. We then move over to the guard. Now this isn't maxed out. I will have to pull these off as well, actually, just quickly. Now this isn't maxed out, but this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. We have 5 slots here at the front, which means we can put some pretty big things on this ship. Plug-in wise, I've got lasers on here. And just to note for plugins, it doesn't matter to here. I match the damage type that you're using. So if you're running PT guns, for example, I should have a projectile on here. I've got laser at the moment though. But yeah, I'd run projectile on here. If you're running laser, run laser. I'd also recommend trying to keep the warship mining capacity increased. The warehouse, up to you. You can drop that and put an armor one on here if you prefer, or energy. Sorry, now back to the guard. So we have the frequency use of transition devices increases, so you get, I think it's 2 more uses of a transition device, and it reduces cooldown specifically on transition devices. We also have must crit every 3.2 seconds. It's not too bad. And we have tactical device cooldown and energy consumption reduced by 18%. This does stack on the tactical devices, so on thrusters and on transition devices, this stacks, which means the cooling time you can get on a transition device is actually quite ridiculous, because it's also got reduced cooldown and transition engine usages and everything on the subsystem, because this subsystem buffs transition devices, not propellers. You can get this transition device down to such ridiculous cooling times that it can almost permanently just keep jumping and hopping forward. I unfortunately haven't invested much into this guard due to the fact that still working on more priority ships for main fleets and second fleets before I come back onto frigates to ramp them up to be useful within wars. As we can see, again, we got this long 5 slot, 2 3 slots, and 2 1 slots. This does put you in a weird position because you could fit something like Reaper missiles to this quite easily. I don't know if there are any 5-slot long devices. If there is, I'd recommend trying to get one on here. It would be quite good. But the Reaper missiles do fit quite nicely, and they give you that 1 slot, which you can use for a 1-slot propeller, which is enough for this ship. The differences between the tiers within the propellers is the amount of speed that they pick up, but it's more to do with the larger the vessel. Since the frigate is tiny and small and weighs nothing, the small props, even at T1, are fast enough, and you don't really need much more than that. Obviously, going for T3, T2 will increase the speed of it and increase its survivability because it will be able to dodge attacks more easily, but it isn't necessary. Bearing in mind that with this plugin, you're reducing the cooldown even on the likes of Reapers. It doesn't show, it does take effect though, so bear that in mind. I have spoken to the devs. There is a lot of issues where warship features aren't taking or you can't visually see the effect on weapons when you put them on, but you have to go into a battle to actually be able to see the cooldown reductions and stuff like that. At that point, you can't see the weapons, so you're not exactly sure what the cooldown is. But yeah, it is working. It's just not working as in you can't see the effect on your equipment. If we do go for this route, that leaves you 2 slots, unfortunately, only for weapons, and I don't recommend putting T1 weapons on here at all. Due to the fact that it's down to that point, look for lower cooldown weapons. Heavy tractor rays are good in this situation. You could probably put torps on here instead. That might get 4 slots in a row or 5 slots in a row. So you could put tractor rays to help that tactical hit. Or you can run, I don't know, potentially, more PT guns or something else in a support role. If you don't like that setup with the tactical, or don't plan on making use of it, or can't find Reapers that I know for a fact go in a line, for example, I know Dustmakers, you can't get that 5 slot line, which is a bit of a shame. It goes at 4 slot with a weird bump above it, which makes no sense. I don't know what the hell that's meant to fit on. But you can go transition devices. This leaves you three T3 slots, which is 1 more than the blast. So this is a higher damage output. And yeah, you run 3 T3 straight line weapons on here. You could run XNTs, you can run lasers. I'm not sure if I've got anything here I can slap on quick to show you. We got some lasers. So you could run something like this, which, works. You don't need to upgrade the transition device too much either. Again, maxing it out is quite useful. You could swap these round so you have a T2 transition and a T1 thruster instead. That would work completely fine. Again, you would need to find a blue transition or higher to be able to do that. I've got transition devices. They're all in use. So, that's the Guard. Not a bad little ship at all. This is where I unfortunately run out of ships, so we'll have to jump into the shipbuilding to show them off in here instead, and I won't be able to fit them, unfortunately. We have the Scorpion. It's one of the coolest looking ships in the game, in my opinion. I think that's a really cool looking ship. I wish the UAVs had that look for pirates or something like that. It'd be really, really cool. Anyway, as you can see, it's a little bit of an odd shape, and that does put it in a pretty bad spot in comparison to some of the other frigates. We do get assault, attack, battleship, stern, and flanks for 36% additional damage. When moving speed is greater than 40, the dodge rate is increased by 42%. And hard to take break tail. Tail is the rear part of the ship. It is from about here onwards. It includes your thrusters and stuff like that. So if you ever see your ships moving slow and they say engine damaged, it's due to the fact that they've taken a crit to the rear and it's gone red. This will pretty much stop that from happening, more or less. Very useful in a situation of frigates, as if they lose their engines, they're in dead water and going to die very, very quickly, as they are not durable whatsoever. This also has the increased dodge rate, so making sure you get a thruster on here is going to be very important. And the extra damage is nice. Unfortunately, with this ship, at most you can fit one T3 weapon, which sucks a little bit. Actually, it sucks a lot. You can get 2 on a blast, 3 on a guard. It's a lot of DPS missed. Your choices here are either to go maybe for a Reaper in the front, taking these 4 slots up, and then 4 T2 weapons. Again, not great, but that's potential for you. And then small thrusters to T2 at the rear. You could also go for a T3 weapon, maybe 2 T2 weapons, and either thrusters and a transition device and a 4th T2 weapon. That's also possible. Again, because of the layout, it's not in a good spot, even for a frigate, which is a bit unfortunate. Last but not least, we have the Empire's frigate. We have the Sustainer. Quite a good layout. And we have the gold coating, 60% chance of an immune abnormal state. That means if it gets hit by fire or anything like that, it has a chance of ignoring the damage or just removing the stack entirely, to be honest. So, not bad. We have the first 28 damage received are invalid. This is 28 points of damage, so it doesn't matter where it comes from. Just any instance of damage 28 times will be ignored. Makes this substantially more sturdy than the other frigates. Again, it can do the same as a blast. It can take a full dust maker to the face, and if it's still within these first 28 damage, it doesn't take any damage. Bear in mind that it's each instant, so if he gets hit by something like snaking cannons, which hit, I think, 10 times or something per volley, that will just basically halve this as ability in one go. So keeping this one further away might be a better idea. So potentially not running lasers or projectiles, or maybe you could run rails. They are far enough away to keep out of the most of the ranges, but potentially running missiles on here is going to be a better bet. When movement speed is greater than 40, critical strike rate increases by 45%. We've seen this before, and yeah, it's not bad. It's okay. This situation, you're looking at 3 T3 weapons here, and potentially a T2 propeller and a T2 transition device, and that's how I would set this up. This leaves you this one slot here not doing anything. You could potentially put a anti-aircraft weapon on here if you wanted to in T1. It's not going to do much. It's not going to really... There's nothing really in this position that's of any use to you. I'd recommend running the T3s over trying to get any other tactical on here. You're just not going to be able to fit it or make much use out of it. But yeah, probably running 3 T3 missiles on here would be what I would recommend. But again, all these frigates have no specific bonus to damage types or anything like that, or weapon types anyway. So you can, if you wanted to, stick on whichever you prefer. Captains. Now, captain-wise, Vincent's pretty good on them because he increases the dodge rate. They all have very high dodge rates anyway, and they have reforms of dodge rate as well. Plus, increasing the dodge rate with Vincent makes them near unhittable pretty much, which is quite funny to watch. So Vincent is an option. Again, he's a very high-tiered captain. Putting him on a frigate is not optimal, but if you want to annoy somebody in war or arena with a Vincent frigate, go for it. It is quite funny to do. Other than that, the only captain I'd really recommend trying to stick on a frigate would be Killer Robbie. Damage increased by 40% with thrusters or transition device for 5 seconds. I'm not sure what that actually goes up to. It does go higher damage output. 45%, 50% maybe, 5 seconds. And this is whenever it uses thrusters or a transition device. If you're using a on there, you can use your thrusters once your thrusters run out, or her after 5 seconds after her ability drops off your shift, you can pop your transition device, and then you get another 5 seconds. You can keep this ability up fairly well, and 50% damage isn't too bad. It actually, it can make some of the frigates deal almost the same damage as a destroyer. That's about it though. Ethan, again, we use Ethan for Wolf on suicide frigates where you not get any upgrades on your frigate at all. It's a 1-1, it's there to die just to give this buff. And that's about it. Anyway guys, yeah, so this is a mini-series. We'll have destroyers up next, and then I'll talk about all the cruisers, and then I'll talk all about all the battleships, how I would fit them, and we will finish off with all the carriers. Don't forget with frigates that they fire 2 weapons every 6 seconds. So most of the time you want to try and get 4 weapons on. As you can see, you can't fit 4 weapons most of the time. So, well, not for T3 anyway. You can fit a mixture of T2 and T3. So yeah, it's where it is. 4 weapons. Any type you want. You like fancy lasers, put fancy lasers on here. I quite like gammas because I think they look cool. I put gammas quite a lot on my ships, as you can see with the guard. I've got a gamma on here. X&Ts are quite nice. I'd recommend the heavy ray guns and the gammas due to the fact that they've got lock-on attack. This means that they won't miss. And sometimes these things are moving a little bit too fast for themselves and miss because they're moving too fast. So bear that in mind, that gammas are quite good just because they got that lock on so they don't miss. Again, 2 weapons every 5 seconds, or 6 seconds, sorry. And that is the rule of thumb for frigates. Again, I've set these up to work with the thrusters and transition devices because they all have transition or thruster subsystems. So that's my recommendation for them, is always make sure you have at least a thruster or a transition, depending on the subsystem on it, to keep that speed up, keep the ability for them to dodge enemy attacks. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you next time.